of the Old Spice Boys podcast. We're off and running, and across football in Britain again, crowds are back in huge numbers. There are already enough stories flying around to satisfy the most demanding supporter. I'm John Richardson, once the Daily Mail, Sun and Sunday Express, and still earning a crust at the Sunday Mirror.
And I'm Neil Harmon, the former football correspondent of the Mail, and I don't eat my crusts.
The Old Spice Boys is a weekly podcast where Neil and I delve into the week's football news and share some great stories from past and present with our favourite football people.
Today's guest was one of the finest talents of his era and many others besides, Rodney Marsh, a true maverick who played for Queen's Park Rangers, Manchester City and Fulham, alongside such luminaries as Stan Bowles, Francis Lee, Colin Bell, Bobby Moore, George Best, and of course, Denis Law. Only this week, we learned the terribly sad news that Denis is suffering from advanced dementia, something he's going to try to tackle with all of his formidable strength, and we can all but wish him well. Rodney, first, welcome to you to the podcast, and perhaps we could begin by talking about some of your most vivid recollections of playing football with Denis Law.
Well, good day, chaps. Hope you're all well, and welcome to Tampa, Florida. Denis Law, yes. I first met Denis when he came to Manchester City in 1974. It was the end of his career. And we signed him, I think it was on a 1-year contract. And we went all the way with Denis Law. We went all the way to the final of the League Cup in the 1 year that he played. He was a great player, a tremendous player. He was a kind of an icon for other players of that time. I looked up to him as a young kid. I think he was like 21 when I was only about 16. So I looked up to Denis Law as an entertainer, a great, truly great footballer, and a character as well. So for all those people around that time that were coming through the game, Denis was the king.
What was it about him what was it about him that made him such a special talent? What set him apart, do you think, Rodney?
He always had a smile on his face. Denis always, he was like we called him Denis the Menace. He's always had this little smile and his little smirk, and he would be a little bit naughty and he would leave his foot in, and then of course he would score magnificent goals. So all things, if you bring all that together, you have kind of the perfect player for the perfect time. And in fact, he's one of the trivia questions that nobody ever gets, and that is, when did a player score 6 goals in a game and didn't win? And I think that happened in a Huddersfield game where the game was abandoned or something like that. And so there you go. And he's now the old chap is struggling with I think they call it mixed dementia, which I've never heard of that before, by the way. But I'm sure I'll be getting there soon.
I know Rodney's still treated like royalty at Old Trafford. Alex Ferguson always says it's his favourite all-time player, and that's some praise, isn't it, of all the players that Sir Alex has been associated with. I mean, that's just the magnitude of the man.
Well, if you're talking about a legend of the game and an icon of the game, Denis Law was revered everywhere he went, John. He came to Tampa in 1994 with George Best, and we did a couple of things together, and the people of Tampa loved Denis Law. I mean, he was just and still is, by the way. Denis will walk around now and everybody wants to talk to him and everybody loves him, and that's the man. That's just the man.
Sadly, Rodney, dementia is becoming a subject that we're talking about far too often for all of our liking. And I know you've said you've been having conversations with Dawn Astle, Jeff Astle's daughter, who is kind of leading the fight for compensation for players who suffered with this horrible illness down the years. I mean, what have you learned from those particular conversations?
Well, interestingly enough, we first contacted each other about a couple of years ago, and I could tell by her demeanor that she was desperate to get something done because her father, of course, Jeff, and it seems to me as though she's across the ball. She's not just myopic about this. She's across the ball. She wants a lot of things to be done for a lot of different reasons. And professional football is part of it, but also, other parts of the game as well. So Dawn Astor is a fantastic person in terms of trying to get that word out. And every time something like this happens, Neil, and Dennis has made this announcement, that gives her the opportunity, if you will, in a sad way, to bring more light to it. Yeah.
It is shaking up football, isn't it, Rodney? Because name after name, big name after big name have been associated with this terrible disease. I mean, it's been brushed under the carpet for many years. As you say, thanks to the likes of Dawn Astor, it's not now. I mean, what is the way forward? There's even talk of, banning heading. There's already been restrictive heading in training now. Can you see a game without heading, or is that going too far?
Well, in the modern era of society, I don't put anything past anybody. I think anything can happen in this society. We're seeing so many dramatic changes in all sorts of fields all around the world. This is an enlightened generation of people. It's progressive. It's for change. They want to change everything. Now, bringing dementia into that, I do, as Neil mentioned, I do things in America where I go to clinics and lectures and things like that. And sometimes I'm the lecturer, and sometimes I'm listening. And there's a thing that we don't consider. Americans always lead the way. You'll know that, and I'm not saying that with any false sense of anything. I mean, America does want to get things done. Although if you look at it at the moment, maybe not so much. But a great example would be they've been investigating heading in America for 20 years, and already in the under 10s, players don't head the ball. They're also looking at changing the size of a ball to a smaller ball for the younger players, so they don't have the same impact after the age of 10. So changing from a size 5 down to a size 4, maybe. And they're then saying no heading in training whatsoever. You can head during games, but not in training. That's a problem, of course, because how do you learn to become a good header if you can't learn in training? But that's what they're talking about. Another thing they're talking about, guys, which I think is, and nobody's talking about this until now, I'm assuming, and I'm assuming you'll take it and start talking about it, and that is this. They look at defenders heading the ball differently than they look at forwards heading the ball. They look at the balls coming out of the air from goalkeepers and the central defenders getting underneath it and going whack, whack, constantly whack, heading the ball. Whereas forward players, usually, they're heading the ball with a glancing header, or, it comes in. So they look at it as a different type of header. I don't know if you see that, but I kind of agree with that, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly a fascinating subject and topic. I mean, sadly, we're going to short corners are going to become quite a part of the game, aren't they? Because no one's going to cross the ball into the box anymore. I mean, it's just going to fundamentally alter the entire concept of association football as we've known it.
Yeah, but like anything else, you're right. But like anything else, it will get changed at the youth level first, and then they'll see how that can work its way up the food chain. And as I say, I don't see the point in of under 10 players actually heading the ball. Personally, I don't see the point of that. When they play five-a-sides, they say you can only pass the ball under head height to stay. Now I would have no problem doing that with the outdoor game for under 10 players. The rules are that if the ball goes above head height, it's a free kick. They do it in five-a-side games. Why can't they do it for young kids? In the outdoor game. So,
yeah. Do you think that the game, perhaps over here now, it's become such a topic of debate, has done enough to help and protect? No.
Over the years, Neil, the game of football has become so, in my view, one-dimensional, and it's got worse and worse over the years. And the one dimension, of course, is money. and things only get done in football if there's money involved at the top of the spear. And if there's no money in the end of it, they sort of go, well, they pay lip service to it and get it out of the way. That's my take. That's only my take. But if you look at the way that the PFA under Gordon Taylor, who I know very well, by the way, over the last 25, 30 years, the way that they've handled not only the actual, it's not only dementia or Alzheimer's, it's also other things like, implants and things like that for players. They've not handled that very well at all. I guess, well, I'm not going to go down the road of talking about the finances of that, but fundamentally, they have not handled it well, neither the establishment or the PFA.
So players who require help haven't been helped to the extent that they should have been helped.
100%. Absolutely.
By all elements of the game. Absolutely. Yeah.
I have personal knowledge of that, by the way. I have absolutely personal knowledge of that. Oh dear, there's no point in going down and dragging, throwing people under buses and stuff like that. But I could probably name you half a dozen players right now that could have and haven't benefited from the PFA. That I understand's got a cash flow reserve of over £25 million. That's what I've been told. But there are players that haven't been helped by the PFA. That that's the way it is. They pay the dues all their life. They pay their union dues all their life, and at the end of it, get nothing out of it. So here you go.
As you know, Rodney, there's a change at the helm now. Gordon's going.
Yeah.
Do you think things might change now? It might be a bit more enlightened. That there might be more concern for past players, or do we have to wait and see?
Well. I'm not sure, John, that I even want to get into that conversation.
Right. Okay, mate.
Sadly, I will give you the premise behind why I don't, so I don't duck the question entirely. The premise being is, I think that the game and society has changed so dramatically that the new guy that comes in will look at it from a completely different prism. He'll be looking at equality for players and things like that through a completely different prism than how it's been. Will it be better or not? I don't know. Nothing to do with me. But it will be, in my view, it will be totally different.
Interesting, Rodney. You talk about money, and obviously it's the root of all evil. I was checking up the other day. When you joined Manchester City, it was for £200,000.
Yeah,
which I think would probably pay half of Jack Grealish's weekly wage packet today. I mean, yeah. You joined Manchester City at a time when it was seen as quite a controversial move, because they obviously had Lee, Bell, Summerby, and Malcolm brought you in, and it was, this is going to be disruptive for City, etc., etc. But you wanted to play for Malcolm, and it was a fantastic opportunity at the time. Here we have kind of Grealish and Guardiola for an a lot of money. I mean, what do you make of that move, and do you see parallels a little bit with you moving there in the 70s?
No, I don't see parallels between me and Grealish joining Manchester City, and I'll tell you why. At the time, Manchester City were a team with a pattern of play, with a style of play that suited them, and they had a 7-year run under Joe Mercer and Malcolm Allison where they were just sensational. Now, Manchester City changed the way they play almost every game. Sometimes Pep Guardiola changes the way they play in games. During a game, he changes the system and changes. So that's a big difference. And the second difference, of course, is I completely upset the team. And it was down to me. I held my hands up. I was not a team player. I played for Rodney Marsh, but the Rodney Marsh playing great football was a massive benefit to any team if I played the way I could play. Man City had a team of players, and I use Colin Bell always the example, the most underrated footballer that I've ever seen in the world. How Colin Bell never got bigger accolades and played 100 times for England and was lauded by everybody in the media as being a truly great footballer. I will never understand that. So the difference is stark. But Jack Grealish, when I left QPR, I just scored over 100 goals as a Grealish type player. Jack Grealish won't score 100 goals if he plays to be 95 years old.
Why? Why couldn't he? He's got the ability to.
No, he's got the ability to be a fantastic footballer, which he is. There's a massive difference between being a terrific footballer and being a terrific footballer that scores goals. And I'll give you an example. I could give you several examples. When all the dust settles, and I'll bring it up to date. I'll bring it up to the last 15 years. When all the dust settles on Jack Grealish's career, he'll probably be a fantastic footballer that made millions and millions, was highly successful. He played for teams that were highly successful, won trophies, and scored about 50 to 60 goals in his entire career. Matt Le Tissier, playing for Southampton, who were a crap team the whole time he was there. I think Matt Le Tissier, I don't know this for a fact, and I'm sure you're going to Bing this afterwards. You're going to go on the old Bing machine to check out. I think Matt Le Tissier scored over 150 goals in his career. So that's why I think Grealish is not the player that others were.
None of which were tap-ins.
Sorry, Matt Le Tissier, yeah.
Which were tap-ins.
That's right. All 35-yard volleys.
Talking of goals, Rodney, as you know, Manchester City are trying to bring in Harry Kane, who is a goal scorer. I mean, you look at his record, fantastic record. If it happens, do you think would that make the difference for City this season, do you think, his goals?
Oh, yeah. I think I've said this many, many times, I think Harry Kane is one of the greatest goal scorers the world has ever seen. I'm not talking about English football. I think in world football, Harry Kane is just, I would say he'll go down top 10. And top 10, when you think of over the years, all the great goal scorers, I think Harry Kane will be a top 10 world goal scorer eventually. He would make the difference. He would guarantee you 20, 25 Premier League goals a season. And if Man City get him and get those goals, they will win the league again.
That's a no-brainer, even though it's going to be ridiculous money. It could be 150 million.
John, you see where you're going with this. You're too clever. That's you know the game.
I don't think so.
You know the game, don't you?
That's a first.
I've never known Intelligence and Richardson together on that.
No, you know what you're saying, don't you? And that is, he's 29 next July, and they're talking about. I heard yesterday they're talking about 160 million pounds. Okay, I'll make an analogy for you and see if you guys agree with this. This is just my opinion. Right, you take Harry Kane, and he's 29 next year, and you sign him to a 4-year contract. Well, at the end of that contract, after 29, he'll be 33. Now, Harry Kane at 33 is going to be worth probably flumpence. He might have had a few more injuries. He'll be on the way down. Been a great player, and probably worth nothing. Let's call it 25 million. Right, so you've paid 160 million for Harry Kane. He's done great. He's won stuff for you, but he's worth nothing at the end of it. If you go out and get Erling Haaland for 160 million, he could play for you for 4 years, win stuff, and at the end of it, could still be worth 100 million because you'll only be 26 years old. So the analogy is, I would rather sign for City Erling Haaland as a young player than Harry Kane as a guarantee scoring older player.
Right. What about having Harry Kane for 1 year, selling him, and then getting Erling Haaland?
You're trying to outthink yourself now, aren't you?
Right. Would you obviously would love to have played with a player like Harry Kane? I mean, you look at Son and what he does for Tottenham. It seems as though he might be having to take on the mantle of more than just the provider or the inspiration for Kane in so many ways. Started the season with a lovely winner against City. But there's a lot of angst now at Tottenham behind the scenes with the way it's all been handled. I mean, how do you see it coming out of that, Rodney?
Well, stay with me on this. Stay with me in this, because I'm going to make an analogy. In America, we have a poker tournament every year, okay? And they play it in Vegas, Las Vegas, and it is millions and millions and millions for the winner, right? Now, if you don't know how to play poker, folks, there's a move in poker that's called all in. Do you know what all in means? I don't know if you know that, but anyway, in poker, you get such a good hand, you put all your chips in the middle, and if somebody challenges you and you lose, you're out. So you could be in for like 20 minutes. Some people are in there for 4 days. You go all in because you think you're going to win, you lose, and then you're out. I think Daniel Levy has gone all in on this deal. I think Daniel Levy has put everything on the line. And the way that it pans out is, if Daniel Levy loses, that would mean Harry Kane stays, because he's not going to get the money that he wants, and Harry Kane stays. Now, Harry Kane stays. He's lost all the money. He's lost 160 million. He's got a player that's got the ump. He's got the England captain that don't really want to be there. He said that, by the way. Harry Kane has said that. Now is the time. So can you imagine the rest of this season and beyond if Harry Kane now doesn't move, when Levy has played this hand where he said, look, if I don't get the 160 million, he stays with us. I think that's all in, and I think that's a massive winner, but it's also a massive loser.
Yeah.
That's just my take on it, guys. That's just my take.
No, it's fascinating.
You were very modest earlier on. You blamed yourself for Manchester City not winning the league that season, Rodney. But you did put 10,000 on the gate for a start, didn't you? and to be fair, football is entertainment. You're the sort of player I'd want to see. And I think most fans want to see players like you, the Mavericks, if you like, of English football, which seem to be passed over when it comes to England caps, etc. I mean, they are, you and the people like Alan Hudson, Matt Letizia, blah, blah, they are the entertainers, aren't they? These are the people that, fans want to see.
Well, yeah, but if your question, John, is why didn't those players get more caps?
Yeah, I was going there.
Yeah. I couldn't wait that long, though. Seriously, I've got to go out later. I have a few years ago, and for our our intellectual listeners here and the people that have studied Shakespeare, I had a Polonius moment a few years ago. Now, Polonius, for those that don't know, was a character in Shakespeare that said, I'll paraphrase it, above everything else in life, you have to be true to yourself. And that was Polonius from Shakespeare, right? Now, when people ask me about Manchester City and I say it was my fault and maybe I should have gone there but 2 years earlier, or maybe I should have gone there and Malcolm Allison shouldn't have played me. That's all true. I'm just being true to myself. I'm not trying to fudge it. I'm not trying to say, no, it wasn't. It was. And you can only be true to yourself. So that's the reason on that one. Your second part of your question, John, was about Alan Hudson, Tony Curry, Peter Osgood, Charlie George. There was like a dozen of the Mavericks. And there was a book called The Mavericks, by the way. And an ITV series called The Mavericks of why they didn't get capped enough. And it's simple. I wasn't trusted by Alf Ramsey. Alf Ramsey didn't trust me. I played a couple of games for England where I was unplayable, completely unplayable. And I say that with no false modesty. We played Wales in the Euros at Ninian Park, and we beat them 3-0. I think it was 1973, something like that. And it was one of the best football matches I ever played in my life. But the next game against Yugoslavia at Wembley, I think it was, I was useless. So Alf Ramsey couldn't trust me as a player. He couldn't trust Peter Osgood. Peter Osgood might not turn up for training. He couldn't. That's not a slight against him. It's just Polonius. The thing about it is, if you can't trust the players, you ain't going to pick them. And every manager, including Don Revie, by the way, every England manager had that problem with those players. So there you go.
I think Bobby Robson was fortunate. You know, he knew Paul Gascoigne, and Terry Venables looked after Paul Gascoigne, but Gazza could have gone down the same route as the Mavericks that we've mentioned.
Great point. A tremendous point that is, because Bobby Robson wasn't one of those. Bobby Robson did trust these players. Bobby Robson, you know, because Paul Gascoigne on many occasions did diabolical things that were very costly for himself and for the teams he played for. I mean, I can remember a tackle in the final that he got carried off. I mean, diabolical, because he's a loose cannon. Paul Gascoigne, and as you've seen over the last 15 years, Paul Gascoigne is a loose cannon, and Bobby Robson could handle that. Terry Venables can handle that. So there you go.
In Act 2 of Hamlet, he describes Polonius as a tedious old fool.
Correct.
So on the back of that, I'll ask you a question about, as a tedious old fool myself.
Yes, and me, yes.
About Alan Hudson. I don't know if you saw Rodney. He did a piece with our old pal Jeff Powell in the Mail, talking about wanting his name deleted from the history books because of the horrible way that the FA treated him. Over, just 2 caps, and didn't look after him when he wasn't well. We're almost going back to the football doesn't look after its own very well scenario we were talking about earlier. I mean, do you sympathise with Alan in that circumstance?
Cool, dear. I know Alan very, very well. Alan was a Rodney Marsh fan and a QPR fan. Alan Hudson came to Tampa once with 4 massive great scrapbooks, asking me to sign them. I know Alan very, very well. Alan Hudson was one of the most gifted younger players that I saw, Neil. In his early days as an 18-year-old, he was running games. He was running senior games as an 18-year-old. To analyze Alan Hudson's game would be to say that, I would say wasted. Alan Hudson was wasted as a footballer. Not to the extent of Matt Letizia, but Alan Hudson should have played, like Glenn Hoddle. And even Glenn Hoddle didn't get the what I thought he should have gotten out of the game, but as a player. But Alan should have definitely been, he should have had 50, 60, 70 caps, Alan Hudson, yeah.
I felt it very sad that he actually said he thought he played his best football under Tony Waddington at Stoke.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that Chelsea side was fantastic, wasn't it? Charlie Cook, Ian Hutchinson, Peter Osgood, Bobby Tamblyn, etc. That should have been his best football, shouldn't it, with that side?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, if that's the way he feels, then that's the way he feels. I saw Alan Hudson play for Chelsea. I saw him play for England in one game for England, and he was just sensational. So he feels Stoke fine. That's the way he feels. He's the best judge of his own career. But I thought at Chelsea as a kid, he was just brilliant.
Where have the best English coaches gone, Rodney? You look at the top teams currently in the Premier League. There's a German, there's a Spaniard, there's a Portuguese. Where have those great English coaches? I know you played for some that you liked, some that you didn't like, but there don't seem to be that many around these days. Why do you think that might be?
It's
or they're not given if they are around, they're not given the chance to show their talents.
Yeah, there's a different dynamic to football in this era. Now, I feel reluctant to go down a rabbit hole because I know the way that this could play out once people hear what I'm about to say. But I've got to say anyway, because I'm Polonius. With the advent of sovereign wealth funds and massive oligarch owners, albeit doing what they feel is right for their clubs. Now there's probably 12 or 14 with massive amounts of money with foreign owners in those positions, who in turn hire foreign executives, who in turn hire foreign managers, who in turn hire foreign coaches. And it stems from, in my view, It stems. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. In a commercial enterprise, there's nothing at all wrong with that. But to answer your question, if you're flooding a club, let's use Chelsea as an example. Chelsea for 15 years have been highly successful under Roman Abramovich. How many foreign entity people has he brought through that football club in terms of managers, executives, directors, even players? I mean, it's massively weighted against English coaches and English, so you can take that and then replicate it at Manchester United. You can replicate it at Manchester City, my old team. You can go all the way down the line. And in the last 5 years, I cannot think of, you look at Arsene Wenger at Arsenal for 22 years, whatever it was. And then, do you know, 1 year, I'm going to go a little bit sideways here. 1 year when I was working at Sky Sports, this must have been, don't matter when it was, I was working at Soccer Saturday, and we did a feature on Arsenal Football Club, who were magnificent, with Thierry Henry and Bergkamp and Perez and Vieira and Manuel Petit, and they had a brilliant team, right? And it came to light this season, they had 17 players on their books that were French. And the 17 players were all under 18s, and they were all in the youth team. 17, not 1 or 6 or 7, 17 players, because Arsene Wenger knew the French market well, and he had French scouts, so they brought in French players. Nothing wrong with that, guys. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it gets to the nub of your question. If you don't have owners and you don't have managers and you don't have, they're not going to be looking at the younger English coaches, are they? Generally speaking.
Would somebody like Malcolm Allison struggle now, Rodney? He was ahead of his time, wasn't he? Where would he be now, do you think, in today's football?
Well, Malcolm Allison was a genius in terms of, on one level and on one level only. Malcolm Allison and I were great friends. We were great friends. We were very, very close, Malcolm and I. We lived together, and he come to Tampa, and we lived in Tampa together. So we're very, very close. On one level, Malcolm was a genius. On every other level, Malcolm was a complete waste of time. As a manager, Malcolm would spend more time. Let's go back to the coaching side, because I want to try and, to your question, Malcolm would do things like he would play 5 forward players in a game, and at half time change it to 2 forward players. And when Pep does that now, Pep Guardiola, what a world genius. He's done this. Well, Malcolm was doing that 40 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it's a great answer. So we probably do have the talent. Terry Venables, he played a high pressing game at Barcelona in the 1980s, and now you'd think that press is a word that's only been invented in the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah, well, there were some fantastic technical teaching coaches around my time. So going back 40 years and latter, Terry Venables was fantastic technical coach with players. Terry Venables was a teacher. He would teach players. Malcolm was a great teacher. Dave Sexton, I don't know if you remember Dave Sexton. Yeah. Don Howe. Don Howe was a wonderful organizing coach. There was lots of British coaches at that time, but there was a lot of British owners at that time. Yeah. The owners of teams would look within, where the owners of teams now, I look at a team like Watford. Now, I don't care about Watford. Other than the fact it's part of my job these days on Grumpy Pundits, we talk about all teams. Well, if you look at the way Watford Football Club has been run since Elton John left decades ago, the club has gone through so many different coaches and managers and even investment, but it's all been, not all of it, but
90% has been foreign money and foreign ownership and foreign influence. Now, I'm not xenophobic. I don't care. I think it's great. That's great for them if that's their model. But I'm answering your question directly on why younger English coaches are not getting a chance. And that is because of that reason, number one. And number two is if they have the slightest blip as a coach, bang, they're gone. You know, I look at Chris Hughton. You know, I look at Eddie Howe. You know, they have a slightest blip. They do great, and then they have a blip. Well, out you go. And we replace it with Charlie Farnes-Barnio from Milan. You know,
it's funny you mention Chris Hughton. They've lost the first 3 games for us.
Nottingham Forest, yeah.
And he's under pressure. And Eddie Howe, as you know, hasn't got a job at the moment, although it was his decision to leave Bournemouth. It looked like he was going to Celtic, wanted to take people with him. They wouldn't allow it. So at the moment, he's out of work. So yeah, where
that's
are
my
they?
point. That John, you're making my point better for me than I can make it myself.
I'm not Shakespeare.
He's having a good run, Rico, at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, he's on fire today. Yeah,
I declare.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant.
Talking of Elton John, this is just a little. You nearly signed for him, didn't you? Los Angeles Aztecs back in the day, Rodney.
Yeah.
You left City, and you went eventually to Tampa Bay. Can you talk us through the Elton John story, please?
Sure. Yeah. Well, a bit of background. Elton John was a fantastic owner of football clubs over the years. Passion for the game, massive passion for the game. And I was at Man City, and I got in a huge argument with with everybody actually. I was the captain, and we'd just beaten Arsenal at Highbury 3-2, and I scored the winning goal, a diving header. It's all on YouTube or wherever you want to go and check it out. 75, Man City at Arsenal, and we come in the following week, and it was against Burnley, and we were playing well, and we drew 0-0 at home. And we come in, and our coach, Ian McFarlane, went absolutely apoplectic about the fact that we'd dropped points. And I went, Ian, calm down. You know, we're still playing great. We're still there. You know? And he then flew off, and then Dennis Stewart said something, and you might know this, John. And Ian McFarlane turned around and punched Dennis Stewart in the throat. Yeah. And he reeled back, and I jumped in, and a couple of others jumped in and said, "What are you doing? What's this crazy?" During that time, Tony Book, who was the manager, was sitting in the corner like he was reading the Sunday Times, having a pint in the local pub. And I just went up to the chairman. I said, "What the guy's going on? We got to." And he said, "This is Peter Swales." He said, "Rodney, what do you think about Tony Book and Ian McFarlane then? You keep on." And I told him what I thought, and on the Monday I was sacked. And that's how it all started. It was big news in the papers up in Manchester, of course. And you know, it's a bad time for me in my life because I was playing great at the time and captain of the team and all that. And I got a phone call from Elton John's agent, and he said, "Rodney," he said, "Elton John is doing a concert in Los Angeles in 2 weeks' time." He said he's asked you to be his guest on his private jet to go over there for 5 days, all expenses paid, and talk to him about joining Los Angeles Aztecs. He's about to buy the club. And I went, my first thought was, is this a wind-up? Is this Mike Summerby making out his... And it was true. It was true. So I said, yes, I went over on the plane. I went to the concert. I spent a lot of time with him, and that's where the rubber meets the road, because we were trying to work out a deal. And while I'm trying to work out the deal, I got a phone call from the owner of Tampa Bay Rowdies, who said, "Rodney, I know you're in LA to sign for Elton John, but we'd like to sign you in Tampa. And before you sign, come down to Tampa, meet with us, and we'll see." So I said, well, fair enough, open mind. I told Elton that. I said to Elton John, "I'm going to go down to Tampa to talk." And he said, "Fine, you know, let me know, blah, blah, blah." Go down to Tampa. And the minute the moment I stepped off the plane, I don't know if you ever had this experience in life. I thought, this is where I want to be. I have no logic for that, no reason or anything. I had 2 kids. I was married and I had 2 children. I thought, this is a place for my family. I could have gone to Crystal Palace, Newcastle, West Brom, Birmingham, Anderlecht. I had a choice of about 5 or 6 clubs, and I chose to come to America. And that's the story, John, in a nutshell. A bit of a long nutshell, but in a nutshell.
So for Elton John, it was goodbye Yellow Brick Road, is it?
Oh, God, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear.
I can't believe you chose Tampa over the Black Country. I mean, what's...
That's right. Well, I did know that Duncan Edwards was born in Dudley, so
that's right. Mr. Delights of Hales Owen and all the wonderful places like that. Wolverhampton, fantastic.
Yeah.
Rodney, I was had a spare hour on my hands this week, and I watched the big match revisited. And dear old Brian Moore doing the commentary. They played the goal of the season from 1976-77. And I couldn't believe that one of your great efforts for Fulham was voted second behind Derek Hales, who scored a bit of a so-so effort for Charlton. Do you ever kind of reminisce and play some of your old matches and just go down memory lane a bit?
I do. I must have had about a dozen messages from people in the UK about that last weekend.
Oh, really?
What was Terry Venables thinking? Did he hate you? because by far it was the goal of the season.
Oh, without a doubt.
Nobody would argue. But for some reason, Terry must have been political, or the sponsor wanted it. Knowing Terry, but I do, and from time to time, people send me videos and people send me snippets of things that they've seen. And do you remember this, Rodney? Do you remember some? I don't. Some of them I don't actually remember. I got about 6 months ago, maybe a bit longer. I got a link attachment from a fan, QPR fan, and said, "Rodney, do you remember this?" And I opened the link up, and it was a newspaper's article about Queen's Park Rangers versus Glasgow Rangers pre-season friendly, 1969. Yeah, Rodney Marsh head-butted the centre half, Watson, and then punched Kai Johansson in the face, and got sent off and was fined. I thought, I do remember that. Was quite funny, really. Pre-season friendly, yeah.
Rodney, you're obviously in love with Florida, and do you see much of the MLS?
Yeah.
And what are your opinions on Mr. Beckham at Inter Miami? Seems to not be going to plan.
They had a good result last night. I do follow it pretty closely, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger here in America. For some reason, and I have no idea what the reason is, John, it just can't get over the final hurdle. Yeah, we have crowds over here of 50,000, watching Seattle play, as you know. New York is terrific, and there's certain franchises around the country that are really good. Inter Miami had a nightmare. It's been having a nightmare under Neville, but they're turning that around slowly. Luckily, every team in the league gets in the playoffs, so they'll be okay. But yeah, it's growing. The big talk in America, in American football. Now, I don't know if you guys know this. You probably do, because you're investigative journalists. Lionel Messi has bought 6 penthouse apartments in Miami.
Right.
Oh, by looking at your face, John, you didn't know that.
It's gonna be a Sunday Mirror exclusive this week.
There's a first for everything.
You heard it here first, folks, on Grumpy Pundits. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Well, they all get on great together. At least if you believe their sort of social media interaction, they do. I mean, Bex might be pulling a plum out there, mightn't he?
Well, there's what's fascinating is because now that's been confirmed that he has done that. He said it himself. In actual fact, he was here 3 weeks ago in Miami. So that's a fact. I mean, that's not speculation. That's a fact. But listen to this. And I know by the look on your face, John, you're fact checking everything I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. No. Or you will afterwards. Yeah. When David Beckham signed for, I think he went to Real Madrid and then he signed for the Galaxy. Or maybe the other way around, I can't remember.
Yeah,
but when he
that's
signed
right,
for Major League Soccer, he had a contract, he had an image rights contract, he had a media contract, all at the same time, because he was the biggest face in the world at that time, David Beckham. And part of his contract, guys, was that he got an option for a franchise. Oh, that's good. In the city of his choice. And when he retired, David Beckham took that option and took the Miami area as the region for his franchise. Talk here as it, Lionel Messi might be doing the same thing. How'd you like them apples?
What? Buying a franchise?
Playing over here.
Oh, yeah. Well, that'll be in 2 years' time, won't it?
That'll be in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
Buying a signing over here in 2 years' time, but in his contract, he has as a sweetener, he has the option to take a franchise at the region or designate the territory that he wants of his choice. They're talking about that with Messi now about over now. Whether that's believe it or bollocks, I don't know.
In the MLS,
in Major League Soccer, yes.
In Major League Soccer,
yes.
It'd be in the Sunday Mirror on Sunday. I tell you that now.
Another one.
I mean, it'd be interesting to think where he might choose.
That's a great point, Neil.
Where would he choose? There's a massive Hispanic population in Florida.
Southern California, though.
Southern California. Wow. San Diego.
Hey, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying nothing.
Fancy week in Palm Springs.
Saying nothing.
Would you like to get involved again, Rodney?
No.
So, yes or no?
Make your mind up.
Because it. Well, I mean, your enthusiasm for the game is as vibrant as it seems to me as it's ever been.
I was football is my life. I was born to be a footballer. I love football. I will die loving football. Nothing will change. Football will always be football. And the game itself and the intricacies of the game pass you by. It's massively passed me by, because things that are happening in football today, which I'm not going to get into, just have me shaking my head. And I would not want to be part of what football is today. So there you
go. Did one of those things that make you shake your head, where at the end of the final against Italy, we brought on two players with the sole purpose of taking penalties?
Well, I saw the other day where, I'll answer your question, Neil, in a second. I saw the other day where Thomas Tuchel, with 74 seconds to go, took out Mendy and put in Kepa for penalties in the Super Cup game. I can't remember, was it Villarreal? Was it against?
Yes, Villarreal,
yeah. Thank you. And that was normal. I mean, Kepa went in; he was all happy. Mendy was all happy. Kepa made the save that won them the trophy. They all hugged themselves after the game, and that is alien to me. Yes, it works and it's great. I always come down the other side of it. What happens if that don't work and suddenly Kepa's had 5 stuff past him and they lose? How does that react for next time? Does he do it again next time? And it's also the way that the game is played is transitory now. It's changing all the time. It changes within games sometimes. And you see substitutions. And then, Neil, you just made a fantastic point, and I'll answer your point. How in the world can you put a 19-year-old sub in the final of the Euro finals? You bring him on as a substitute, and he takes your most important penalty in 50 years.
He's never taken a penalty before in his life.
I mean, what is the thinking? That's why I said that, about the game has passed me by. Somebody must have thought, well, that's a good idea. but not me.
Obviously, the England manager did.
My 5 would have been, Harry Kane would have been 5th, right? Because I know that he's going to stuff the ball in the back of the net. And then I would have the most senior players that I could find. I wouldn't care if they didn't take penalties for their club. They would be 5 senior players that have been on the pitch. Now, that's just my take on it. And the fact that I suppose the other side of the coin is, which I read an article by, can't remember who it was, forgive me for saying, if he scores the winning goal, that makes him now a legend and a hero for the rest of his life. As a 19-year-old, he comes on the subs, scores the winning goal. That could have been a Jeff Hurst hat-trick moment for the rest of that young player's career, but it didn't work. And he's now becoming the Southgate pizza guy from 30 years ago, whatever it was.
Well, what troubles me is that we're about to, set off on a World Cup campaign, Rodney, and at the end of it, if we qualify, there'll be matches that will be decided on penalties. Bound to happen. It's bound to happen to England because it always does. You get those guys, you Rashford and Saka and what have you, and Sancho step up. Oh dear me, what's going to be in the back of their minds? Excuse my French, I cocked up the last time. What's going to happen this time?
Oh, no doubt about it. And as a player, as an ex-player, I can tell you that does happen. And the first penalty you miss, I went about, I think it was 18. I went 18 consecutive penalties and scored all of them. And by this time I was at Queen's Park Rangers. And I missed a penalty for Queen's Park Rangers. I think it was against Leeds. I can't remember. Maybe in a League Cup game. And the very next game, I was still taking penalties. And the first thought in my mind was, don't put it in the same place. So I've now been conditioned, because I missed one. The next time I'm questioning myself. Now that young man, next time he takes a penalty, if he ever takes a penalty again, he'll be thinking, last time I put it to the goalkeeper's left and he saved it, I better go to the right. Or I'm not going to go to the right, because he will be thinking, I'm going to move it to the right now. And it becomes the old psychological contest, doesn't it? And as Peter Shilton once said, the great Peter Shilton, it is a psychological contest. Simple as that.
Who was the best player you played with, Rodney?
Oh my goodness. I can boil. Over the years, I've said the same thing, but I can boil it all, because you need an explanation. I can boil it all down to say this: for about 2 years, George Best was the best player that ever played for about 2-year period. Now, I didn't play with him at that time, but I did play with him obviously much later in our careers. But at that time, I was at Fulham, and George was at Manchester United. And when I say to you guys, and I know that people never saw him play live, and I know the younger fans coming through, George Best was unplayable. You could not play, and I don't care who you were. You could take the filthiest, rottenest defenders that would just kick lumps off their grandmother. You could take athletes that would try and mark him man to man. George Best, for 2-year period, was unplayable, and unfortunately, he only lasted for 2 years, because he got to the peak, and then it sort of, like the old saying about what they call that, about the star that burns out very quickly, whatever that is. And that was George. But George Best is the answer to that question.
They were great days at Fulham, weren't they? Entertaining days.
Funny days. Harlem Globetrotters with Bobby Moore, with the late great Bobby Moore. Yeah. Funny.
Fantastic.
And it's interesting that QPR and Fulham have both started this season with a on the front foot, haven't they, Rodney? I mean, it's the progressive teams by the looks of things, playing a great style of football.
Isn't it amazing? Do you know what? This is why we love the game so much. Football is amazing. I watched Fulham play at least 7 or 8, no, probably a dozen times last year, home and away. And under Scott Parker, they looked at a nice little. In a possession, they can control parts of games and pass the ball nicely, and end up losing 2-1 or 1-0. Right now, they went to Hull City. I watched the highlights. They went to Hull City, and it was like attack the whole game. And that's the way that we love the game. Sometimes it surprises you. Sometimes it's predictable.
And Tampa seems to favour you, Rodney. How long have you been there now? And do you see this as the place where you're going to remain?
Well, Well, we're COVID at the moment, yeah. I moved here in 1975, in October 1975, with Elton John, who I didn't sign for. I spent time in Los Angeles, of course, and then because his band were just nutcases and they wouldn't let us leave. Because George signed. I forgot to tell you that. In the same trip, George Best signed for Elton John, and I didn't. And we would go to Chinese restaurants and bars and clubs and things like that. So it was always remember. I hope I don't get his name wrong. His name was Ray Cooper, and Ray Cooper was the drummer percussionist.
Yeah.
And you might want to check it out with your Daily Mirror thing, Sunday Mirror thing. And before the October 1975 concert in Dodger Stadium live, I'm going live to the concert. He said, because we've been out for a Chinese and we've been out for a few drinks. He said, Rodney, he said, would you like to come in to my my mobile home thing that they have, you know, what they camper things that they have, and nobody can go near, and there's all security. You know? So I said, oh, love to. And I went in there, and I'm going to say this slowly because I want people to get a flavor for this. So I went in there, and he's having a drink, and he's having a pop, and he's getting ready, blah, blah. And suddenly he went and laid on a table, which was like a football medical room table. And he laid on it, and a trainer came in, and I thought, oh no, he's not going to be massaged, is he? He's not going to be like a footballer, have his legs rubbed and all that. And the trainer got a bag, and he opened the bag, and he took his hand like this, and he started strapping it up like a boxer. And he had all this tape in his fingers and in his thumbs and all, on both hands. And I went, Ray, I said, what's all that about? And he said, if I don't do this, at the end of the concert, there'll be blood streaming all down my hands because I play the gong and the drums. And oh, you probably know this, John. I see you're nodding there. And he said, I play it so violently that every time all my hands bleed at the end. And I thought, wow. I never give that any thought at all in my life. I'm thinking about football and what we're doing. But that was pretty neat. That was to find that out.
He's still with him, isn't he? Still with him.
I have no idea. I don't know what happened to him. No.
He doesn't appear the full shilling, to be honest.
Well, he didn't then. But hey, John, to be fair, neither did I.
Well, that's fantastic, Rodney.
Fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant. We had to do just a kind of an outro, which you don't have to listen to because we bugger it up.
Don't forget to give Grumpy Pundits a plug on Sirius XM.
Let's just sorry.
Yeah,
we must just say this.
Got to give them a plug. Yeah.
Because you're now a grumpy pundit. Can you just because the least grumpy person I could possibly imagine? How did that come about?
Well, the Grumpy Pundits is a football radio show in America. It's a national show. We're on every day, 5 days a week on Sirius XM 157 is the channel. We have guests from all over the world. It's 5 days a week. I'm on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And it's just a cracking show. So,
like this one.
Very similar. Very, very similar, but ours is live. Ours is actually live, which is in itself fascinating. So there you go.
There's a little quid pro quo, of course. We'll plug you if you plug us.
Well, hang on. This is like buying a house, right? Right. I've already given you a plug. How'd you like them apples?
Oh yeah, okay, all right.
No, my hands are God. Yeah. Last week, live on the radio, I said there's a brand new podcast coming out, and I'm going to be doing it next week. I said they've already had David Platt and Harry Redknapp.
Oh, fantastic.
And that was on Sirius XM last week.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
How'd you like that? See?
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
You never said, Rodney, thank you very much. I'm not asking for anything
I
else.
didn't hear it, sadly. If I'd have known you'd said it, I'd have definitely, I'd have definitely said thank you.
Just one little thing.
Sure.
Sunshine Skyway Bridge. I shit myself every time I cross that.
I tell you what, you're a better man than me. I never go that way. I always go 275 down the 75 down the motorway. I never go over the oh no. You know there's been a crash here, don't you?
Is this a joke, Lord?
No, it's not a joke. There was a massive barge went into it a while ago, and it was shut down for, I think it was what, weeks and weeks.
Right.
Yeah, and when you're up there and the old wind is going, yeah, you don't want to be there. Don't want to be on that. No, you better
go to Anna Maria quite a lot. You know Anna Maria Island.
Do I know Anna Maria Island? Do I know Susan Sarandon? Do I know Denzel Washington? who have got houses down there? Yes,
I don't.
I know Anna Maria. Yes, I do know Anna Maria. Yes.
Lovely. Cheers, Rodney.
Rodney, that's absolutely brilliant. And let's keep in contact. Keep in contact. And good luck with the show. We must. We'll hear it. We'll hear it.
Thanks for your time, Rodney. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Sam.
I didn't hear his voice, but
he's muted.
He's muted.